And joining us to discuss the latest on the protests in Iran is geopolitical strategist and Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub of the United States Army, retired. Lieutenant Colonel Gaub, thank you so much for joining us today.
Morning, Steph. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Now, London-based news outlet Iran International reports that 12,000 people have been killed by the regime in these protests in Iran. And the State Department of the U.S. says an Iranian protester may be executed today. Given President Trump's warning that if they execute protesters, they'll be hit hard, what kind of U.S. action could we soon see there?
Yeah, Steph, that's always the question when when Trump talks about hitting someone hard or taking strong action. Is what exactly does that mean? It doesn't always necessarily mean that it's led by military strikes or military action. Although I suspect in this case it will be eventually if they keep going down this road, which they likely will. But he started off as usual with economics and talking about sanctions on nations that do business with Iran. Any nation that does business with Iran, that's a good start. It's a way of getting people's attention without going to military first. Second of all, there was, of course, a strongly worded message from Trump to the people of Iran, or as I like to say Persia, really. That's what it really is, saying that we'll be behind them, and they need to hear that. The third thing was they talked about getting Starlink in place to make sure that internet access is there for the people, not only for themselves, but to make sure that what is happening has a means to get out so the world can see how the regime has been very violent. Outside of those three things, military strikes can include things such as ballistic missile production facilities, drone production facilities, potential cyber attacks to reduce capabilities in certain areas, and maybe limited strikes on oil infrastructure, although you got to be careful with that because if the people there are successful, that would be part of what they would need to actually rebuild their nation and enjoy economic success too.
Yeah. And speaking about a potential strike, just last week you were speaking on NTD Newsroom and you noted how the capture of Maduro in Venezuela was expertly done. Of course, the U.S. has the capabilities to go in and execute so specifically. But as a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and you're also a battalion commander in the U.S. Army, now retired, do you think the U.S. would ever go in and capture the Ayatollah or other top leaders in Iran?
I find that one very unlikely because the difference is Maduro was under indictment for criminal activity, and basically all we did was go in and arrest him because of that indictment in New York. Iran is different. They're not under necessarily an indictment per se. Could we go in potentially and remove their leadership through kinetic strikes of some sort? Absolutely, that's a possibility. And I think the message of Maduro is that our intelligence is very good. We know where people are. We've always known where the Iranian leadership was. It's just a question of whether or not it was something that we thought was worth the risk engaging in, and not only because the escalation that is in the Middle East, but also it's the what happens next after that. Because power, of course, abhors a vacuum as well, and so you have to be prepared for what the follow-on could be. So I don't doubt at all that was an option that President Trump was briefed about yesterday. The question is whether or not he thinks it's worth it to pursue that, and then do we as the American people think so as well?
There are questions, as you've alluded to, about who is likely to take over if at least the Ayatollah steps down. Maybe it's still the regime continues. What are your thoughts on the most likely scenario for potentially peace in Iran, or what comes next?
Well, I think the most likely scenario is one that I've forecasted for quite a while, which is a successful toppling of the government by the people, which assumes that the state security apparatus, which is the IRGC, their military is designed for internal policing, not for foreign activities per se. Whether or not that agency actually stands down because of what the people are doing, or whether it doubles down on violence and tries to crush the rebellion instead, that'll be the key. But the options there are pretty broad ranging. I would suspect if the people are able to depose their current dictators, that the existing government in exile of Persia would be available and ready to go in and take over, so long as the people of that nation actually accept them in that role. And that's always the struggle post uh, having dictators or leaders removed like that. And we see that happen in Venezuela in a way too. It's never easy to do that, but at least there's something there outside of Iran that can move in and take over. And they've known about this for quite some time.
President Trump has been speaking about Russia and China a lot recently in terms of national security. What do you think they're thinking about right now as they watch U.S.-Iranian relations under this pressure in Iran?
Well, first of all, of course, Russia has had a mostly friendly relationship with Iran for a while, but I don't think it's one of those relationships that is so strong that if something significant changes, that Russia is going to take a much stronger tactic towards the United States because of it. I do not think they would assess that risk as worth escalating with us. They may try to influence something after whatever activity we take and not try to prevent it. China, of course, is looking at this as if, we've already taken, potentially completely taken off the board their access to Venezuelan oil, which, 80% or so went to China. If you removed Iran as a China ally in the long run, that's more of their oil supplies to China. And they were already only about 2 weeks, had about 2 weeks capability of that in the first place. So China would be looking at this from energy security and being very concerned. Russia, I don't think, again, would assume the risk of getting between us and Iran, and probably not that relationship worth holding on to. But they're also watching how our military works. They know how good we are. That is always a concern to them. And second, they're watching what does that transition look like as it's happening in Venezuela and as it could happen in Iran.
Well, it's great to hear your insights today and all your expertise right behind it. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Gaub. Good to speak with you.
Thanks, Steph. Good to see you again.